Hi guys, today I have very important concept I want us to learn today, that is using context in Onshape assemblies in context design. And in this exercise I want us to model a shock mount to the lower control arm, but we want to use in context, and make sure that in a named position you are in this named position, that is initial. Therefore, the first thing we need is to click on this bracket here, select edit in context, or if you select this bracket, you can in the tree you can see where it is. It is here. Still, you can select here and select edit in context. What happens when you select the edit in context? The other parts, you can see they are translucent. You can be able to select, but this one is the most active. Go to front view, shift 1, and let's sketch on this face. We are sketching on this part, but we want to to reference this. We want to reference this piston here. Therefore, if you select this edge and use it, a context is created because now we are referencing to another part. You can see sketch 9. There's this arrow. Arrow appears next to sketch 9, indicating an in context reference has been created. Okay, an assembly context pull down menu appears at the top of the feature list. You can see here assembly context, because this context is referenced in an assembly. You can see this one is an assembly, but we are designing this context in part level. Okay, next let me use this. I want to have a line, another line, vertical for construction. I want to mirror this line to this point, then this line and this line to be tangent. This point, this are going to be coincident. Okay, like that. You don't need to to trim. Okay, no need to trim. You can trim or not trim. Another one, then we need so this one is not supposed to be tangent. Let me delete this tangent. Let me also delete this coincident. I need another arc instead to connect these two, like that. This arc and this arc to be tangent. Then from this point to this point here to be 15. That's fine. Then this point, these two, this arc and this one to be coincident, or not coincident, to be concentric. Therefore, this arc and this circle to be concentric, like that. Okay, next, extrude the sketch applied distance of 15. You see the sketch is on this here. Therefore, not to extrude it, shift E to extrude to 15 opposite direction, add to this bracket here, like that. You can see now we have created this one, this extrude 10 onto this bracket, but it is differencing this part. Okay, now you can add fillets of 5 mm, shift F. You can now select this edge, this edge, this edge, to add the fillets of 5 mm. Okay, then this is the context. And you can see now assembly context, we have them here. You can go to the overflow. You can rename and call it lower shock mount. It is good to rename your context because you might have about 50 contexts and you want to keep to understand this context means what. Yeah, make it a habit of renaming your contexts. Now you have a mounting bracket here. Okay, then you go back to assembly. You can see now you have a lower shock mount of main assembly because this is the context. Lower shock mount main assembly, here it is. Okay, see what happens when you drag this one. The components change transparency. Therefore, you cannot go back to assembly. When you go to assembly, see what happens. The part is here. The mounting point for this piston is here. It is referencing a context. Okay. Next, there's something I want to illustrate here first, but let me first do some editing for the mates. The first part we selected was this part that is a lower control arm. The first one becomes primary. You can see this arrow is complete, this one is dotted. This means that this one is a primary. Secondly, I will illustrate more as you progress. Okay, but now the shock mount appears on the lower control arm. You can see the shock mount. Let's move the lower portion of the shock away from the shock mount and the mate. Let's mate now these two. Okay, I want now to move this away like that. Okay, you can always go back to the initial position. I think it doesn't capture. Let me control Z and I want to update. Okay, this means if I move away, let's see, I can apply and go back how it was. Yeah, therefore let's move away a little bit here, and we want to make this with a cylindrical mate. Why are you using a cylindrical mate? Cylindrical mate ensures two things. It ensures this hole and these two, they are concentric, and also ensures that the mate connectors of these two holes, they don't need to be, they can be on different Z primary axis location. If you select, let me do this practically, cylindrical mate, this face and this face, apply. You can see now if I go to the cylindrical mate here, this is the first mate connector. You can see these two mate connectors, they have different Z location. If you want this Z location to be the same, you have to use a revolute. But now revolute will bring some error. Okay, that is when you apply cylindrical mate. Let's now create another bracket on the here to mount this hole. Okay, but now you're going to use another method because we want this bracket to be mounted here. It is a new part. It's not a feature. Therefore, I won't use edit in context. Instead, I will use create part studio in context. I want now to create another new part in assembly to reference assembly context. The origin, the first thing you need to define is the origin of the new part. Let me use assembly origin, then say okay. Now we go back to part studio. This one is a ghost assembly, whereby now you can be able to define your new part. You can see this in a new part studio. There's a new part, there's no part here, and that's where we need to design. If I want to sketch on this face, once you select this face and sketch, a context is created because my part is referencing another part with respect to assembly. You can see now this arrow. Okay, an arrow appears next to sketch 1, indicating an in-context reference has been created and an assembly context pulls. You can see assembly context down, pulls down menu appears at the top of the feature list. Then I need to use this convert entity. Sometimes you have to, okay, like, let me just use an normal circle. Doesn't want to convert due to some reasons. I want a circle here. Let me say coincident. Don't know why this one is. I want to convert this. Let me go to use this. Okay, that is first one we need. Then we need to use also this, like that. Yeah, you can see now this sketch is from this face, this sketch is from this part. We have two sketches that are from different parts. This is from this is from this. The advantage of this is if I go back to this part and make this hole bigger, this also updates because it is referencing to this, but you have to update that context. I will illustrate how to do context updates when something changes. Okay, therefore go normal. I also need to use this. Yeah, you can trim if you want your sketch to be neat. Okay, that's fine. If you want maybe to use a complete circle instead of an arc, is also a good idea, like that if you want. Yeah, yeah, it's a fully defined sketch because it is black. Then we need now to extrude. Let me extrude this. Shift E. I want to extrude up to face. Which face? This face. I'm referencing my extrude with respect to another part. You can see now this extrude is also in context. If I use blade, let me assume I'm using blade, still it is in context because the source is sketch 1, that is also in context. Okay, therefore if I go to up to face, this face, okay, I want to go to up to face, that face, that's fine. That's the bracket. You can see the bracket. A new part has been created. Shock mount bracket. This one is a shock mount, a shock mount bracket. Okay, then we can rename this one here, rename to top shock mount. top shock mount. Top shock mount of main assembly. It is the context. Note, two context arrows appears, one for sketch references and one for feature references. Okay, the reason why we want to rename context is to give them a descriptive name to avoid mistakes, especially when you start to update them. Okay, now select insert. You can now insert and go to assembly. This means you insert this part and go to assembly. If you don't want to insert, you can just go to assembly, but let's insert and go to assembly. You want to insert this, then you say okay and go to assembly. You can see the patterns here. Here it is. If I collapse here, that's a shock mount. You can see this arrow shows there's a context. Now you have two contexts here. We have this rower, and you can see, and we have this. Those are the two contexts in our assembly. Then we have to mate. You have to mate this. It doesn't mean it is mated. Okay. Therefore, I want now to mate this hole to this hole here, like that, with the first end mate. Yeah. This part, as you can see now, we have created this part precisely in context. Okay. Next, we want to do something else. We want now to make the shock to the bracket. Let's make the shock to the bracket. Okay, supply the shock argomet. You can see this one. You have this shock argomet. This one. Let's first suppress this. Okay, let's suppress that. So see that it can move because I've suppressed. If I unsuppress this, it goes back because you can see here. Let me just illustrate what is happening. We have an angle here that is 25. If I change this to 45, you can see this one changes to 45. This is a 25, 25. Yeah, that's the angle we want to suppress for now, so that this one can move easily. Okay, do not delete the shock argomet. Okay, this mate positions the shock for this example and its reference later on. Okay, then move the shock away from the bracket. There we have done. Then we want to make the shock mount bracket using a revolute. I want to make this using a revolute. I want to make this one here to this using a revolute, like that. You can see now I can now move easily. I can move easily now. Okay, so now let's go to initial if you want to go back to how it was. Okay, next, the initial design is complete. Here you can see we can be able to move our assembly back and forth. Okay, then we want to activate this initial here. Then I want to suppress this cylindrical here. This cylindrical. Remember that the one we created here, cylindrical. Let me suppress it. And I want to suppress this revolute one. Then these are the new mates we have created. I want to suppress them so that I want to illustrate how you can update your in context and unsuppress this. Okay, Then we want to edit. We want to edit this shock. It was 25. I want us to use 20, like that. You can see since we have suppressed this, see what happens here. This one moves up. And remember this circle was referencing this one. It didn't update. But native CAD systems, once you change position, it updates automatically. Here it doesn't update. Okay. Then I want to go back to the mate connector. Let me edit and use -20 so that I can lower this a little bit. Also, you can see now on this controller it didn't update. Okay. Let's now go to the next step, that is the in context edits. Remember, they remain in the original locations and do not update. But now we can update ourselves. We have to update. Therefore, you have to right click on the lower control arm. You hover up to the update. You can see we have an update here. These are the contexts that are available for the lower control arm. You can update the lower shock mount. Update. See what happens. It updates the new location. Okay. But now my fillet has disappeared. You can always go back to this part here. You can switch here to Part Studio 1. Okay, not Part Studio 1. This one here, I want to see what has happened to my mates. Switch to this, or my fillet here. Edit. It is because it wasn't able to select this line here. Therefore, you have to select it a little again. The reason why, whenever I'm creating fillets, instead of using edges, I like using face instead, because it will always update automatically than an edge. Okay, it will always update automatically. If I go back to the mate connector edit here, I want to use -15 instead. Let me illustrate the difference between an edge and a face. If I select now update, even the fillets updates because they are referencing a face, like that. You can see. Therefore, let me go back to a value of 20, like that. I want to update again. Let's click update context, lower shock mount. I'm updating this bottom context, and you can see the top doesn't update because this one is a different context. Okay. Therefore, you see, once you update, you always get a notification. Then for the bottom one, this one requires editing. Therefore, you have to right click on this shock mounting bracket and hover over editing context. Then remember I said you can right click this one and select edit in context. You can see top shock mount, or right click here, edit in context. You want to not update. If you update, let's see what happens when you update. You see what happens now. It updates. You can see it updates now. But we want now to redesign, because my part has, you can see, I want another design. Still it can update. Can see it has done some quick update, but I want, I've done, okay, let me update this. I want, instead of that, I want to edit. You can use edit top shock. I want to edit instead. Okay, and this sketch here, this is a sketch I want to edit, and delete this instead. Delete this and the line here. I want this line to be always horizontal, and then I need another circle that is tangent to this and this to be tangent. You can always trim like that. You can trim if you want to trim, but fine, you can leave it the way it is. See, let me edit here, and I want to remove this there like that. Yeah, go to assembly. This is the design I want, but now you see my new design interferes with this part. They interfere. You can always go back here, edit again. Now I want now to reference this part because they can see they interfere. And say if I go to the sketch here, edit the sketch, I want to use just like that. Okay, let me select, let me trim so that it can be able to remove this section here. Let me just trim like that. Sometimes it's good to trim to make your sketch neat. There's no harm in that. Okay, you can do that. You can see, but I don't want this type of a design. I want this one to be straight here. I want a circle. This one here to be, let me delete this now. I want 40, circle of diameter 40, like that, and a line here. You can trim this bottom section, another line from this point to here, vertical line, this line and this line to be tangent, and a arc from this point to this point, an arc that is tangent like that. This point be vertical. Yeah, that's fine. That's a good design. Yeah, you can work with that and go back to assembly. You can see now this one is still not differencing this. Therefore, I go back. Let me edit in context, top shock mount. Here seems okay. Therefore, let me go back to assembly and update. Yeah, you can see once you update, that error is fixed. Okay, that's how you use in context to design. It's very important. Okay, see you in my next in context video. Bye.